So today is a story time. I would like to talk about one of the cases where we were setting aside a prenuptial agreement. I had a client come into my office, very beautiful, young, outside of America. Let's say I'll make it up, Belarus. She came to my office and she said that she missed the deadline when her spouse filed for default judgment. And in that default judgment, her spouse took her, at that time, 6-year-old child, let's say son, kicked her out of the house and assigned all assets to him. And she didn't have any money. She was on the streets. And the reason he kicked her out is because when she caught him cheating. He was, it was okay. But when he noticed that she didn't come home one night, he decided that this is a sign that she must be cheating. So he kicked her out. And then we started talking, and it turned out she had a prenuptial agreement that she signed 2 days, red flag, 2 days before she got married. She signed it in an apartment without a lawyer. So it was translated into her language, but she didn't have anyone to explain to her. And at that time, she was much younger than him, and she didn't know better. Beautiful, in love, thinking this is it. And her partner, her soon-to-be husband, had already another marriage, another divorce, was a business person in the United States and California, and she was just young and starting her career. So she signs it. So 3 red flags. There were no financial disclosures, so she didn't know what she was waiving. She knew she's waiving everything, whatever there is out there. She didn't have a lawyer, and 2 days before the wedding. So we know it has to be 7 days before the wedding. We know that she has to have a lawyer, or at least have a separate writing in her language explaining what she's waiving, and it's got to be disclosure as part of the prenuptial agreement. So what do? At that time, I agreed, and I don't do it very often, I agreed on a deferred payment. So I prepared a set-aside request to set aside this prenuptial agreement, served it to the other attorney, and then also we filed for temporary spousal support and attorney's fees. The court ordered, so we served all of that. Pending this other hearing for setting aside the prenuptial agreement, the court ordered that she receives $4,000 in child support and spousal support and $25,000 in attorney's fees. So when the hearing came for the prenup, the lawyer who drafted the prenup initially was like, oh shit. The very agreement I drafted, that lawyer thought to themselves, I probably warned this client that this is not going to be enforceable if they don't have a lawyer on the other side, but the client didn't listen, and now we face the consequences. So that lawyer didn't step aside officially, but the other side hired big law firm who turned out to be my professor. So I'm sitting across the, on the other side, my own professor from my own law school arguing against me, saying that I filed the wrong motion, saying that I shouldn't have filed request for order to set aside the prenuptial agreement. I should have done summary judgment, and therefore everything should be dismissed. So the judge didn't buy it. The judge said, well, they file what they need to file. And in fact, still in 12 years in my career, I haven't seen anyone file summary judgment on any issue. So I think that was, BS argument. Plus, they said that the agreement was notarized, and in East Europe, Belarus and Russia and Ukraine, notary, and also in Germany, notary serves a role. Actually, I don't know for sure, but in some countries, I know for sure in Germany, they serve a role of an attorney. Like here, you go and pay $12 to authenticate your signature. In countries, for example, like Germany, to get a license to be a notary is a big deal, and only a limited amount of lawyers can get that. So the other side claimed, well, actually, it was signed in a notary's office, although 2 days before she was advised, which seems odd because they came together to a notary to sign this agreement, so that notary couldn't have given her legal advice because she was with him, and the confidentiality, she didn't hide. It was purely to come in to sign, right? And then they go to say that they provided 3 names of lawyers and she chose not to contact them. And if you look at the code section 1615, family code section, there's a lot of no's. If not, then not, then not. But it means the agreement is invalid as a matter of law. So translating it in a normal language, meaning the court can, by its own, on a short cause hearing, say, well, I think this agreement is not valid as a matter of law because A, there is no signature from my client's lawyer, and there is no disclosure. So he added the disclosure later. And it became convoluted. So the judge said, I don't want to make a snap decision on the spot. This is a trial issue. So I'm going to set it for trial. So the case was set for trial. Pending trial, I had to depose him, the other side, to find out, well, did you provide names of 3 lawyers? What names were that? Did you provide disclosures? Why weren't they attached? He claims it. So all these questions we were discussing in the deposition, and of course they deposed her, which wasn't good because she kept saying she doesn't need his money. I'm like, why am I here? If you're asking me to set this aside, that means you need that money. And this is maybe a cultural thing where I don't need your money, but at the end of the day, the child is going to his house and lives a lavish life, and then comes to your small room and can't even eat normally because there is no space, no money. I mean, this is not about you, I explained to her. And then anyway, so suddenly during the divorce process, one moment, her lawyer sells her husband sells her his $3 million company to his best buddy for $50,000 a year for 3 years payment. Well, I had a friend who I asked to call this company, and he said he sold the company and he's no longer working and he's getting these $50,000 a year, which is very little for such a big company. So basically he says, I have no money. And then he hires corporate attorney. He hires big law firm who has at least 2 lawyers working on his case. Then he hired someone else. There were 5 lawyers on his side total. So that lawyer who drafted the agreement was on his side as well. And yeah, I think that was it. So during all of this time, he's in violation of court orders. He's not paying support. He's not paying for attorney's fees. So my bills are going up and up and up, and she has no money, and I pay out of pocket because I wanted to help her. And I don't do it often. I don't want this video to be an advertisement that I work for free, but sometimes I do this kind of work once a year when I feel that this is a cause worth fighting. And the client who, before she came to me, she had another lawyer who didn't help much. Drop her, a lot of lawyers don't work on deferred, and I understand that we need to eat, right? We need to pay mortgage, whatever. It's everyone's decision, but basically she was left with no lawyer. Now, I had to file for contempt, which is quasi-criminal motion, where he would have to be indicted and he would say, I'm not guilty, and things like that. And so that happened. We had this hearing coming up. So basically, he says, I cannot pay, and technically it's not a valid defense in a contempt when the judge already determined that you have to pay $25,000 in attorney's fees and spousal support, that you don't have money. But basically he said, I have no money. So he came to the deposition with a check of like $200 instead of $25,000 or some bullshit. And the more and so I think the strategy was to bury me in the paperwork. And they were partially successful because I worked my ass off. I worked until 12 to just scan the documents they sent me. At that point, I just had to do it myself because I didn't want to involve other people. I thought, okay, well, this is what I have to deal with. So, and the more paperwork they gave me, the more incentivized I became to fight this. When I know that someone is trying to bully me, I kind of have an opposite reaction, like, really? You're messing with the wrong person. Well, let's see what's going to happen. So, after they deposed her, after I deposed him, we had this pending hearing. We scheduled a trial on set aside, and most counties have this buffer where you have to go through mediation to mediate. So we got assigned a lawyer, and then the judge was like, holy moly, I don't want to assign the lawyer. So that lawyer got exchanged to a judge who used to be the presiding judge of that county. So basically the top-notch person you can think of was assigned to this case to mediate. And in this county that I was in, it was only 3 hours allowed, not a whole day, not many judges, not many lawyers, just one judge who mediated 3 hours. So from 9 to 12. So they arrived with 5 lawyers claiming he has no money. I mean, it's obvious he has money to pay lawyers, right? I mean, come on. So we didn't settle in 3 hours. He offered some ridiculous sum of money. I don't remember what it was, maybe 50,000 and we wanted 1 million. We settled for much less than that. But how did we settle? So we didn't settle in those 3 hours. That judge said, okay, how about you come to my private mediation office that I work in, and I volunteer for the entire day to help you settle this case. So at that point, I already recruited a litigation attorney as a backup. I recruited a CPA who was going through the boxes and boxes I scanned and organized, and private investigator. And so what we did find is that guy didn't disclose $300,000 in a hidden Bank of America account. That was something. Imagine. I filed an ex parte request, meaning an emergency request, without giving him a notice to freeze that account pending litigation. That was a bomb, right? Finding $300,000 account when he's not paying attorney's fees, when he says I'm broke, when he testifies in court. I told you I had a friend who called that company he said he sold and asked to speak to him about a new project he wants to hire him for. And guess what? He said, yeah, I will connect you to him. And then that other person responded, and I provided that declaration from my friend saying that this other person is, her husband is full of, BS. So that didn't help. Finding $300,000 in a hidden account, getting him on the line and asking for new projects to be assigned to when he says he sold the company to someone else is not going to help. So everything started to crack. So after 9 hours of negotiating, we still didn't settle because he's like, how dare you hide private investigation, and you probably use some illegal means to hack my accounts. I mean, we're going to seek, bully. He even said to my client that he's going to, in the language that when the judge took them outside, to discuss just two of them in hopes that it will help. He even told her that in the language that the judge wouldn't understand, that he's gonna take her parents they were in another country, into the forest and finish them, which she knew what it means. So nobody can prove it because it was, in a language the judge didn't understand. There were no cameras, and she came back sobbing. The mediation was over. I just didn't want her to go through this again. And of course didn't let her outside to speak to him, even with mediator present, because he didn't understand the language. So what happened? After mediation finished, the judge, and we were all sitting exhausted, and I'm like, Judge, how is it possible? They have 5 lawyers. He's offering pennies on a dollar, and there's nothing we can do. So he says, well, I said, do you have a suggestion that would be outside of the box? And he said, yeah, I think if you speak to his lawyer who drafted the agreement, his initial lawyer, you will get there. So after the mediation finished, not successfully, I started texting that lawyer. It was already 3 to 4 days before the contempt hearing, where he would be indicted, and I would present evidence that he has $300,000 in hidden account. And the judge, by the way, denied my expertise to freeze the accounts, because the judge said I have no jurisdiction over this particular bank, although our mediator who was presenting the judge said, technically you do have jurisdiction over him to tell him to freeze the account, and yes, the bank can be required to do that. Anyway, I still haven't figured out why the judge did what the judge did, but everything happens for a reason. So now I texted back and forth, and we settled on a number that I'm not going to share, because I feel like a lot of you are going to be upset. Is it too much? Is it too little? I'm just going to, leave it out. But basically that covered expenses and more than she would ever have gotten if she didn't go through me, through this process. So, she was happy. Let's say it this way. She got her child back. She got 50-50. They had 1 week on, 1 week off. She got the money to buy a new house. And now she got pregnant a year later, moved to another state. And before she moved, she came to my office and said, gosh, your work is so amazing, so crazy too, but I want to be a lawyer. How do I get to that? And I explained to her what it would take to become a lawyer. And of course, she didn't want to do that because it's a lot. It's a different video. A lot of years in a lonely library and lots of tests. So, not for everyone. Anyway, so the end story, she remarried, has another child. I don't know if she bought a new house or not, but that was her plan. And she was, I think I left her with a feeling that, justice exists, and not all lawyers are all about money, because what happened is I did only charge her for half of the fees, or 2/3 of the fees that were incurred, not 100%, because I didn't want her to receive less money than the lawyer's fees. Sometimes lawyers fight, then they win, and then they charge, and then the client gets nothing. So I didn't want that. I want her at least to get the same amount I get, because it turned out my amount was higher than what she would get, and I didn't feel good about that. So, yeah, I feel that case was, restoring justice for her, and a feeling that it exists, and